Hello friends, how are you today? Hopefully well. Today's video is possibly called Tower Priority. I know that's what I have on this screen right now. I might change it because I realized people might confuse this with like a tower's attack priority, like how it chooses what to attack. But what I want to talk about today and what this video is going to be about is how we decide, first of all, what a tower represents in the game, and then how we decide, do we take top tower, mid tower? Should I prioritize defending bottom tower? We're going to talk about how to make that decision by reflecting on what each tower gives us and what the enemy's tower gives them. And then we may not fully discuss it in this video. That might go in the game plan, but it'll at least give you an idea of how we're making these decisions of which tower we want to get. So that's what this video is meant to be. If you're looking for something on tower attack priority, I guess that's something else. Maybe we have to pick a different title. I'm not sure. But first of all, we are going to go into what a tower gives us, some properties. First off, gold. When you take a tower, you get some gold. The team all gets a set bounty. Depending on the tier of tower, you get more or less gold. And then whoever gets the last hit on the tower will also get this random bonus. There's some variation to it. If you get it denied, then both teams split the bounty and no one gets a last hit bonus. If you're curious about the specific gold amounts, you can go look at the Dota wiki. But personally, I don't think it's really that important for you to know the exact gold amounts. Because really, gold it's nice, of course. Of course it's nice. But it's probably the least important thing on this list. And that's why I don't want to bog you down with specifics, because I really don't think it's that significant when I'm thinking about a tower. So I'm not thinking, let's go get top tower because of that sick, 80 gold I'm gonna get or whatever. Honestly, I don't even know what it is right off the top of my head, because this does get changed around a little bit every now and then, and I really don't think it's that important to know specifically. Next, fights. What do I mean by that? When you go to an enemy's tower, they're probably going to defend it. Sometimes you don't want that, especially when you are weak. That's annoying because you're trying to take the tower and then the enemy shows up and they they stop you. How dare they, right? Sometimes when you're stronger, that's actually what you want. You're like, come on, I want to fight. I want to fight. Let's go. But you try to chase them in the jungle and they just run away because they're like, okay, I don't want to be in this jungle. You chase them in the lane and they leave because they're like, okay, fine, you can have this lane. But you get to a tower, and now they have to choose whether, okay, we need to try to defend this tower, and now, they can't go anywhere. You get the fight you want, or they're just going to give it up, and you're going to get a free tower. And that's pretty good. It's better than, say, getting space in a jungle or space in a lane, usually, where you're now getting a concrete objective that is helpful for your team and helpful for some of the reasons we're covering on this list that we're going to get to. Next, safety. First of all, the safety of the tower. The tower gives a armor and health regeneration buff to whoever is under it. So that helps you. But also the fact that the tower hits pretty hard. Well, relatively, at least at the early game, it hits pretty hard. So many people are scared to walk under an enemy tower. So it's this little safe zone. Some of these categories overlap, and we're kind of getting into that now, where because it provides vision. Okay, we'll skip forward. So vision, it provides day and night vision, so it sees further in the day, but at night it still covers most of its own attack range, but I think it's a little shorter now. And then it also provides true sight. So invisible heroes, they can't just run at you under the tower. Well, they can, but you're going to know they're there. It's not the same as them sneakily following you in the jungle or in the lane. And so that ties into safety, where, okay, because I can see people approaching me, because I know that there is no invisible hero on top of me right now, it overlaps. A lot of these categories, they overlap with each other. So part of the safety is the vision that the tower is providing you. Next, it is a place to teleport to. So it takes 3 seconds to teleport to a tower. If someone else has teleported there recently, I think it's 20 or 25 seconds. I don't remember which. I think it's one of those 2 times anyways. But if someone else has teleported there recently, then the second person to teleport there goes up to 5 seconds. And then everyone after that is an additional 0.5 seconds. So 5, then 5.5, 6, and so on. The ability to teleport is, like we discussed in the Town Portal Scroll video, it's really big in this game. It allows you to traverse the map very quickly. And of course, you do have to spend a bit of mana and gold. And then there's the cooldown of the item itself. But still, it's a very powerful tool. Not just for efficiency to quickly get around to farm, to be where you want to be, but you can help to join a fight. So, we're seeing more of the overlap here, where if someone's diving tower, you can teleport, respond, and be there. You can teleport somewhere to gank someone else because, you showed at the bottom of the map, they thought you were there, but you quickly went into the trees, teleported top, smoked up with your team, got a kill. They didn't expect that. It's this level of travel and the time you save by being able to teleport rather than walking. The ability to teleport, we kind of mentioned there, also adds to the safety factor, where you're not just safe under the tower, where you have, both a buff and vision, but because someone could, let's say you're a bit outside of tower range and the enemy attacks you, well, your teammates can teleport to the tower and then run out to you. So towers, they provide safety directly under themselves, but then in a larger sense around the map, how quickly you can teleport and then move out, it extends its reach of safety in a different way. It doesn't provide you the buff or vision, but because your team can help you, it feels safer to be near a tower. Plus, you can run back to the tower if, say, your teammates can't help you, but you just run back to the tower. It's still this element of safety. All of these are probably somewhat known, at least by most people. And then the last thing I want to mention here is the tower will reset creeps or push them. What do I mean by that? This is the one that I think many people may not necessarily consider. It's hard to explain this without just showing you in a custom lobby, so I'll probably do that later. But essentially, when the enemy creeps are pushing towards you, like if you have a tier 2 and tier 1 towers, those creeps are not going to make it to your tier 3 tower. They're going to be killed by the tier 1 tower. What that means is that this tier 1 tower represents how far the enemy creeps can get to. And if the tower kills them off before your wave gets there, then this kind of resets equilibrium, and the next waves will meet where they're usually supposed to, a bit outside the tower, your safe lane's tier 1 tower. And if the enemy creeps survive long enough that your creeps are delayed a bit under tower, that usually ends up pushing your lane, which is a very weird concept because the tower doesn't move, but it's pushing your lane. It does. It just builds up your own creeps. It happens very naturally in fact, you may have seen it if you've been watching these videos when I sit in a custom lobby for a long time and I don't disable creep spawn. Eventually, those creeps just push back and forth and take towers. The game just naturally has them move back and forth, and of course, heroes can do that as well, but the towers alone will also do it. But they can't do it forever. The creeps will eventually take the tower on their own, but how long that takes I actually don't know how long it takes just leaving creeps on their own to do it, to be honest, because that's pretty uncommon in a game. But usually the heroes will also play a role. How much they help push a lane and how much they help de-push the lane. So it's hard to have a good judge for a good frame of reference for that, besides just having a lot of experience with different heroes and seeing there's 10 creeps down there. That's a big wave. That's going to take our tower quickly. Or it's oh, there's only 3 creeps that are under the tower. It's fine, Yeah, let's move on. As we're thinking about these tower priorities, I want you to ask yourself 4 questions. 1, do you, the hard support, have Waveclear? Some do, some don't. So I've been playing Zquixotix a lot. Great Waveclear. There's also different degrees of Waveclear, where Zquixotix has one of the best. Who else? Keeper of the Light, Coddle, also has very good Waveclear. Now, someone like Crystal Maiden, she does have the ability to push waves, but her nuke, her AoE nuke, is not enough to just kill a creep wave immediately. What this means is that if she uses it on the creep wave and then walks away, it will push the wave because it does damage all of them for quite a bit, but she's not likely to get the last hits because the creeps are going to finish it off. So if she wants to get those last hits, she now has to sit there and auto-attack. Or the reverse, where she auto-attacks first and then uses her spell. That would work, but it does require a longer commitment from her, and it's just not as fast as someone like Jakiro, who can cast Q, cast E, and then he could just walk away, and that entire creep wave will die, and he'll probably get at least 2 or 3 last hits just from his spells doing damage over time. Or, say, Keeper of the Light charges his blast up, does so much damage that it is very likely to just kill off a good bit of the creep wave, and if he really needs to, he can cast Blinding Light or cast Illuminate a second time. So he can push the lane very quickly. So there is this different degree of it. Now then a hero like Bane is just really bad at pushing waves, right? Because he's just single target. It's just what he does. So it comes down to the AoE abilities you have, or say Oracle, who also is mostly single target, but because it's such a low cooldown, technically he can push a wave if he wants. It's just going to cost him a bit of mana. But if he, like in a spot, in a pinch, really needed to shove out a lane by casting spells, he can do it. But someone like Bane, he can't. He can try, but it's just, there's only so fast he can go. We'll get more into that later, but essentially, if you have the ability to push waves, you can defend or push towers on your own. And if you don't have that ability, you're very bad at doing anything like either of those on your own. You usually need to be with people. So if your team is choosing to push, it's like, okay, I'm going to push. And if your team is defending, then you're like, okay, I'm going to go defend, because you just can't get much done on your own. You're just not meant for it. Next, does your team win late game? Some of you may not have enough experience to be able to judge that on your own. Sometimes it's not always clear. Some games are like, it's very hard to see, but other times you know when your team is just going to fall off. When the enemy team has like Spectre, who else? Like Terrorblade, just some of these late game heroes who, if you get to late game, there's a really strong chance that team's going to win. Medusa. And so if your team is winning, you may choose to prioritize defending a bit more. Because you just want to stall the game out, make it go longer. And so by defending, like that's what you're doing. Whereas if you choose to be aggressive and the enemy team also chooses to be aggressive, that's going to result in a lot of the towers being taken very quickly, which tends to speed up the game. So rather, instead of both being aggressive, if you see the enemy team is being aggressive, you might choose to be defensive and try to create a stalemate there and extend the game. Or if they're being defensive, then you can choose to keep trying to push a certain area and force them to stay there. And like that's still a stalemate in a sense. And of course, if you can just get towers and they can't, then that's like always good. There's never a case where that's bad. But usually it requires like a bit of a trade where it's like, okay, we're getting a tower, they're getting a tower. Like, or we're trying to get a tower and they're stopping us. Like, usually you don't just get stuff for free unless you're at a lower rank, in which case sometimes that does happen. I guess that's not totally fair because even at a higher rank, people make mistakes, but also sometimes people realize they can't contest, so you do get some objectives for free. But I think that's a bit different of a scenario. Next, how is the game going? So whether you're supposed to win late or not, you know, if your team is just doing really well at the start, you can just take objectives, even if you were meant to be a late game lineup. And if you were supposed to be an early game lineup, but you're doing really bad, a classic case of this is when you have like a Dragon Knight and some other early heroes, and you see the enemy team is going to win late, and you feel pressured to push really quickly. And so you're like, we have to take buildings, but you had a bad start. And so you're actually just not strong enough to force objectives like that. But you feel like you have to, so you try to do that. But because you are not strong enough to do it quickly, the enemy team is delaying you with like 3 heroes and you're all 5, and then 2 other heroes are farming up, and you quickly lose because like you just weren't able to push fast enough. And in those cases, you have to recognize that, and you have to split up a bit more and try to catch back up before you force objectives, at least as a 5-man group. Like maybe you can still force objectives with fewer people, but you need to take into account how the game is actually going when you're deciding what towers to defend or take. Finally, do you have split pushing heroes? This includes people like Nature's Prophet, who's like literally a split pusher, or it could just be someone who's really good at being away from the team, who wants to farm a lot. So like Anti-Mage, Storm Spirit, really mobile heroes who can just go to a lane on their own. Storm Spirit may not be the best example because he doesn't take towers, but like Anti-Mage, Nature's Prophet, they're good tower takers. Tinker is someone who pushes lanes, but he's kind of slow at taking towers because he doesn't have tower damage himself, so he really depends on the creeps taking it. So I feel like they kind of count as split pushing heroes, but not totally. Not on here would include people who just want to farm separately. They're not necessarily split pushing, but they just need time to farm. Someone like Earthshaker in the early game, when he really needs to farm up his Blink Dagger, he likes to take a lane by himself and just slowly get last hits. The reason for asking yourself this is for two purposes. If you have a split pusher on your team, then you don't need to deal with defending certain lanes. So sometimes that's something a 5 position will want to do. We can choose to defend a lane that no one else wants to be in. But if you have a split pusher, then they can often do that. And you don't want to go there in those cases. So if you had a Tinker on your team, you don't want to take the role of, okay, I'll take this bottom lane that's dangerous. It's like, no, Tinker wanted to do that. If you take that spot from Tinker, then Tinker is going to have to go to do something else. And often he can't. Like, he has to go be aggressive when that was supposed to be your job. But in other games where you don't have a Tinker and you have someone who wants to be aggressive, then yeah, it is your job to take up that bottom tower. But that's why we have to ask ourselves, like, who is on our team? And then same deal with that Earthshaker. If Earthshaker needs time to farm, then he needs to be in that lane alone, and you're the one with the rest of the team, like, pushing an objective. And if you were to swap spots, like, Earthshaker just doesn't contribute much because he doesn't have his Blink yet. And you're happy to farm, but, like, your item was not as important as that Blink Dagger. So here we are in the custom lobby, and this might be me rambling a lot. But essentially, we're just going to go into each tower first. Mainly these tier 1s, they kind of represent a really big part of the game. And then tier 2s a bit, to a lesser degree. And we're actually not going to focus too much on this high ground stuff because there's going to be a separate video on that. So a lot of this right now is just talking about the tier 1 and 2 towers. How do we know which ones to get? Let's start with the Radiant side. Actually, what I'm going to say first applies to everything. So taking in mind those properties we discussed, so you can see how much vision this tower provides, which is quite nice. I've disabled creep spawn. I might enable that later to show you what I mean about that. But we get vision. This is our true sight. This is our area of safety. If we're under here, you see we get a buff. And the thing is, so this is our immediate area of safety where the tower can hit the enemies and protect us. But I'm also quite safe here, aren't I? Especially if, like, I have my Quelling Blade, I cut this, where I am somewhat safe here because of how close to the tower I am. So even though I'm not being protected here, technically, if they do attack me, it's only a short distance to safety. So the safety extends beyond this circle, is what I want to say, you know? It extends fairly close by because we're near, but then it extends further as well because of how quickly you can teleport to these lanes. Let's say I'm a mid hero, right? I teleport, I blink, and I'm ready to cast a spell, like, all the way out here, all the way over here. Like, yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer, but the difference of, say I'm an offlaner, the difference from being up here and spending 30 minutes to walk down, not 30 minutes, 30 seconds to walk down here to retaliate, as opposed to teleporting 3 seconds, blinking in, and, like, I'm here. I'm here now. It only took like 5 seconds. And so that's how the tower goes all the way, not just this small circle, but towers tend to represent chunks of the map. Something like this. Or where this mid tower protects this whole area. I'm drawing on the mini map if you didn't notice. Like, this was that tower. This one. Offlane is like this chunk, really. And that's because of the ability to teleport, and then, you know, even if you don't have a blink, just run at the enemy and to catch them out or cut them off in a fight. So the safe lane tower, this is where we start the game if we're Radiant. Usually, well, let me put it another way. So after we defend our safe lane, we're going to walk top when this laning stage is over. If you remember that video, I know I teleported, but it's because we're not going to spend 30 seconds walking here. I generally don't recommend teleporting top when laning stage is over. Like, I do think you should walk. Why do we want this tower? Well, remembering what I just said, this tower represents safety for this part of the map, which is quite large. Outposts, kind of, you know, because you can teleport there, but it's quite a long teleport, like 6 seconds, and also because we can capture this as the Radiant, then it, like, you know, it's not a reliable idea of safety for the Dire. It's this temporary method of safety where, you know, if you see me come to cap it, you know I'm here, and it's kind of this sentinel that lets you know, okay, maybe I shouldn't be in this area anymore. I'm not going to be able to rotate here anymore, but at least it gave me the knowledge to know that the enemy team is taking control of this area. So the reason this tower is so good to take in the early game is because we want to set up our carry to play over here. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with BSJ's dead lane concept. For us, our dead lane is our own safe lane, and for the enemy, it's up here. However, it's not really a dead lane until this tower is dead. Because as long as this tower is alive, a lot of people can teleport in and be safe here. For several reasons. One, that whole teleport thing we talked about. But then, let's talk about the creep resetting that I mentioned. If I had creeps here, and they slowly push, like let's say I, you know, used my spells, I helped to push a lane, they can get up to here, and we're going to have vision for that. That whole period of time, you have vision around your creeps. And when my creeps get here, I know that the enemy has to respond. What that means is that they're going to come here, and we're going to like be able to see them. And if they don't show up, then that should be suspicious. Being at a tower that has a lot of creeps to farm is a very valuable place to be. Right? When the lane starts and we want to be here, it's because we have creeps to farm very close to our tower. It is a very good thing. It's a very safe spot to get gold. So if you are pushing a lane of creeps to a tower and no one is here, which is a very good spot to be, then that must mean they're in a better spot, which could be a smoke gank to get you. It could be like some group action. There's somewhere else they would rather be than this safe area to farm. So whether someone shows up or not is fantastic information, pushing in the creep wave that far. But my creeps can only get this far. And in that time, what do? If I don't want to push the tower and the creeps are right there, I could come over here and farm this wave, maybe. But if I come over here, this is getting a little scary. Because, you know, someone could TP in and come fight me here. Someone could be teleport here and wrap around. The mid laner could be heading in this way. It becomes a little scary to be here, but I would say this is still feasible. But if I want to be any deeper than this, this is now very scary. Because I only have vision up to here with my creeps. Which means all of this is in the fog of war, kind of like we see now. And people have many ways to teleport in and run at me. Maybe even this outpost if I didn't cap it yet. Whereas, if I have this tower, not only have people lost the ability to teleport here, but now my creeps can push in all the way up to here. That means if I have creeps here, there aren't going to be any enemy heroes here in most cases, right? Because if they had been there, my creeps would not have made it this far. So I know that this part of the map is probably safe. Similarly, if an enemy hero had been here and they saw our creep wave pushing, they would have gone to cut it off. So the fact that my creep wave makes it all the way over here means that this whole part of the map is probably safe. So now I know I can walk up here with a bit more confidence because there are no heroes behind me, which means if anyone comes this way, or this way, my escape path is to go this way, is to run back here where I know I was safe. Previously, when this tower was up, this is still probably our best escape path, but it's scary because someone could cut us off, and so we're not as confident coming out here. But now that this tower is dead, And especially once we've pushed our creeps out. Because say this tower is dead, but our creeps are only here. Then I'm still scared to be out here, because there very well could be a hero waiting to farm the creep wave once it gets a little further out, you know, not so close to our tower. They could be right here waiting to farm the wave here. Or more likely, you know, they're farming the jungle in the meantime. And then once the wave gets closer, then they're going to farm it. But unless I have a ward or check for myself, it's scary to come here if my creep wave is here. But for the reasons I mentioned, the creep wave reflects like an area of safety here. You know, ignoring these towers down here in the bottom lane, if my creeps are here, then that probably means like there's not likely to be a hero around here, like this area. But it's not totally true. Like someone could still be in this triangle. And that's why the offlane tower tends to be worth the least in terms of what you want to get. Because like a hero wouldn't just sit here, right? They're more likely to be in this triangle spot. And from here, they can just go here. So even if my creeps are here, it doesn't mean that this area is empty. It probably means, you know, there's no heroes here, and there's no heroes here, but it was pretty unlikely to have any heroes there anyways. And there's nothing for me in this area. Like, why would I need to come here? Like, what does that guarantee if these creeps are here, guaranteeing my safety to be here? It's like, oh, cool. I'm by their side shop, or their secret shop. Yeah, maybe you need to buy something, but it's like, there could still be someone literally right here looking at me, and I don't really know anything. And it just doesn't work the same way. Like, when our creeps are here, you know that this whole spot was safe, and that's why it felt a lot better. That's why this tower up here, the enemy safe lane tier 1 tower, is almost always your first objective to get. The reason for that is for everything we described, but to also imagine what the carry wants to do. Ideally, your carry, looking at the minimap, the carry wants to play in this area. Your carry. So Radiant carry after the laning stage, and after you take this tower, and maybe this tower, but at least this tower, they want to start playing around here. And what they're going to do is they're going to farm the wave, say push it all the way up to this tower, and then they're going to come over here. They're going to farm this, which is quite safe because you know the creeps are here. And so, especially if your support has placed a ward, the carry should feel very confident to come up here and farm this. They can come down here and farm this. This is also quite safe. And then they could come back here, farm this, farm that. By that time, the creep wave has, you know, hopefully been pushed out back to here, either by this tower or by a hero, and they can come and farm this. Now, if for some reason your carry gets pushed out of here, let's say they have 3 people, the enemy sends 3 people to come gank him, but he gets away. Your carry just comes down here to your own triangle and farms here. He can farm this, and then he can make the judgment call of, you know, if the 3 heroes are still pushing this lane up to this tower, he can decide if he wants to fight, if he wants to join in and farm that. Maybe if he sees 3 heroes up here and, you know, another one in the bottom lane and one in mid, then he knows their jungle is safe again, and he can just walk back to where he wanted to play before. If those heroes are someone he doesn't want to fight, and he doesn't feel confident coming to the jungle, then he could make this way over here if he really has to. He might come mid to help push that tower because, you know, if they have 3 heroes here, then they don't have that many heroes to defend mid. And then if they rotate to defend mid, he can just come back top or back here, you know, coming back either way. And worst case, he could run all the way over here, or he could teleport to bottom. He has a lot of options from playing in this top area. What if your carry was playing over here, and then he gets pushed out? He's not going to feel confident to run into their jungle, because this is a very dangerous part of the map. He has nowhere to go back to. This is just the base. It's not worth his time. And this run is a very long walk. This is a very unideal movement. You don't want to have to do that frequently. So say he was where I am now. This walk is very... It's like half the time, even less than that, probably a third of the time. Whereas here, it's quite a long ways to go. Remember how I said he wants to push the wave here, then he's going to come down here and farm these? What if he did that here? He pushes the wave, let's say this tower's gone, he pushes it up to here. Might not be a carry that could do Ancients, so there's that. This is scary because, they could teleport here, wrap in, teleport in either mid tower, come over here. So this is quite a scary spot to be in. This is definitely a scary spot to be in, even when this tower is down because it's so close to this area and because there's a high ground nearby. It's very scary. And so then what? He pushes the tower up to here and then has to run all the way back. It's very inefficient for him. Whereas this one, he pushes in, and now he's on the high ground here farming these camps. There's no way... Like, yeah, they could be from the other side of the trees, but that's why if your support has good wards here, no one is going to surprise him from the high ground. And even if you don't have wards, like, he will still see them, like this full 1800 vision. He will see them and still have plenty of distance to run away. That's why we want to get this tower first as the hard support. This is a tower that we don't necessarily have to take, because like I said, the carry already feels safe to get to these camps once this tier 1 tower in the safe lane is dead. This doesn't really add anything new, does it? There's no camps. Like, yeah, there's a camp over here, but this tower is not the reason this camp is scary to get. It's because of, this tower and because the high ground is right by it. So for AM, or not AM, sorry, your carry, this tower does not strictly represent anything. And so the reason, another reason you don't have to get this tower is because your carry is going to play up here, pushing the lane in, and then, farming jungle if they need to. But sometimes they won't go to the jungle. They'll just stay here and keep hitting this tower because they'll see, like, the entire enemy team down here. The carry will probably get this tower on his own. So you don't really need to focus a lot of effort here getting it. Having said that, if you can get this tower fairly early, all the better. And in fact, just makes this area safer to play for your carry, right? If this tower is gone, then instead of pushing the creeps here and then going to farm these camps, the carry now pushes the wave all the way up to here, which pretty much means no one is over here. And so now he feels safe to, come back, get these camps. He would still probably skip this camp, but he would probably get these, go over here, and then come back to the lane, push it in, and repeat. It's this very nice, like, smooth cycle. And if, again, he ever sees the enemy team all the way bottom, he's going to pressure this tier 3 tower, which is going to force people to come back. Let's talk about mid. Mid is good for several reasons. One, it's near the runes. So if you ever see a really good rune, you have a point to... I mean, you usually wouldn't teleport to secure a rune, but you should feel much safer to go pick up the rune. If the mid laner comes here and he grabs the rune, but then there are a couple people here who try to kill him, like, he's quite close to the tower. Whereas if this tower is gone, this rune becomes kind of in this no man's land, where without this mid tower, these are your nearest rotations, which are, like, all quite far away, Whereas with the mid tower, it's like, boop, boop, very close. So first off, rune control. Then the entrance ways to your jungle. So like this camp, if this tower is up, it would be very bold of you as the Radiant to farm this camp. You have to feel very confident for whatever reason. Because you're so close to the enemy, and because it's, close to the high ground. But once this tower is dead, you can feel a little more confident. Even though it's still near the high ground, you just have more leeway. Same with this way, where, it's a little scary to walk through here. Hard supports on the enemy team will still feel very safe to ward around here if they have a tower, because a tower makes them feel safe. If this tower is gone, they're not going to feel as safe to come ward over here. So there's a better chance of you being able to sneak into their jungle through this way. This mid tower represents, I would say, a safety area, something like this. Because people can teleport, rotate in to help, but also it is spotting these pathways to the jungle that people are unlikely to take if the tower is up. But once this tower is down, now people have access to these. The Radiant has access to these. Before that, when all the towers are up, right, the only way to sneak up here is right through here, which is this very scary uphill ramp that you can't see up. Or to come over here, which is, this is not so bad, and this is not so bad. It can be a little scary still, though. But if you want to come through here, this part is a little scary to get to. Same with this way, whereas like this is not so scary because like why would anyone just be here without a tower? It's like unlikely. But then coming up here can be a little scary. But you could ward up here if you really needed to, and you can reach that without going the high ground. Again, cliff wards, but you could if you need to. We kind of already talked about why the offlane tier 1 is no good, and that sort of covers all the tier 1s. The other thing I'll say is Roshan plays a large part in what towers are important. That's why these towers are very good. These 4. And then these 4 are also quite good. Because it's the closest way to teleport and get to Roshan. But the downside is, we just talked about how good it is to get this tower. And we talked about this tower, but the same concepts apply to this one, where it's like, you take this tower and you don't really feel that safe coming in further, so it's kind of whatever. So this is one of the Radiant advantages, where Radiant already wants to get this tower naturally, and it's their first tower they're going to take, and this tower was very nice to have for Roshan. Whereas this T1 offlane tower on the Radiant is one of the last towers Dire cares about getting, but that means that Radiant is always going to have a close teleport to Roshan. So then they have to put more priority on this tower, which doesn't really open up the map for them, besides improving Roshan's safety. Tier 2 safe lane, we kind of talked about that a bit. Let's talk about Tier 2 mid. This one really helps to protect these areas, again, because of the teleport path. So the protection area for a Tier 2 mid is something like this. Because you can teleport and rotate around, you know, even when your game is going poorly, usually this is like a safe camp to get, and like your triangle is supposed to be one of your last bastions. You'll hear people say that a lot. Part of that is this mid lane safety. But at the same time, it's very difficult to take fights here because, well, let me change that. For the Radiant, it's easier to take fights here usually because like look how many ways you could approach this tower. There's a lot you could do. It kind of works in both ways, I guess, technically. Dire also has a lot of ways to approach a fight here. Whereas if we look at this tower, there's an approach this way, and there's an approach this way. Technically, you can run through here, but in the end, you're still going to come through this way. And same deal. Like, if you go that way, like, it is 2 areas of approach. And then very rarely do you have heroes that, like, will have blink or whatever set up in trees. So technically a third way, I guess. But generally, it's going to come here or here. Whereas for mid lane, you know, you've got like this way, you've got your high ground considerations, you've got a lot of area this way, low ground, high ground. So fighting the mid lane can be good for you. It depends who's in the lead, I guess. Where if you're in the lead and you have good vision, then you feel much better about approaching this fight because you're like, oh, we see a lot of them here. Okay, let's stay on this half. We have that flexibility. Whereas even if you have good vision and you see a lot of them here, you're like, oh, should we go into the trees? Then we're all stuck. You know, I guess we just have to back up. You just don't have that level of flexibility in the fights, which favors more mobile teams usually, but it does kind of depend. Tier 2 tower helps to protect this area, but not too much because it's the low ground and this is the high ground. It still matters, but it doesn't... What am I trying to say here? This area is very naturally safe, I guess, even without towers, because it is the high ground. And not just one high ground, it's like 2 levels of high ground. So it's like here to here, or like all the way there. This tends to be very safe even without any towers. That's why this triangle and this triangle is considered, you know, your safety zone. You see people approaching before they can see you, usually. Whereas if you think about your safe lane, because you have large sections that are on the low ground, and like over here you have low ground, you have some high ground, but then a lot of low ground. That's why this tower matters a lot more, is because it's like on the same level. I don't know if that is making a lot of sense. Where I guess what I'm saying is, like, if I was dire and I was farming this camp, yeah, I see people at the same time. I see people coming to get me, but they see me as well, so they can now blink and react. Whereas if I was, say, up here farming, I'm farming ancients, I'm hitting the ancients this way, and I see someone walk this way to come to me, I can start running away immediately because I see him before he sees me. And that's why these towers, they do protect this area, but to a lesser extent than this tower protects this similarly low ground area. I hope that makes sense. And then I think that's all the tier 2 towers. So this off lane is something like this. Really, when you're thinking about towers and what they protect, you're thinking about how people will teleport to them and then rotate and move around. So it's like, oh, this opens up this pathway a little bit, even though really I could have taken that pathway anyways. But you know what? With this tower being down, it's just that much safer. And then this pathway, it was like very dangerous to take as long as this tower's up, right? Because they see you walking this way. So it's kind of like, I can't really take this tower or take this pathway that much. But now that this is dead, now you can go up there. Should we switch sides to talk about Radiant? I think we should. Let's do that. One thing I wanted to say, actually, before we switch sides, and I forgot. This is a sneak peek to our probably last video in the series on making a game plan. Let's say you're the Radiant safe lane support. You win your lane. You decide it's time to move. You're going to leave a ward for your carry. And then you're probably going to walk this way or walk around. Maybe you go mid to help him out. And then you go top. Whichever way, however you get up here, besides teleporting. So that you can teleport to your safe lane if needed. But you're going to come up here. And the three of you, the 3, 4, and 5, are going to try to take this tower. You might need your mid to rotate for help. It depends on the game, but usually 3 of you can at least create a lot of pressure up here. Whether you take this tower quickly, or whether it takes like 10 minutes slowly pushing this, that's fine. If you're creating a lot of pressure, 3 of you are here, and the enemy has to respond in kind, your carry should be okay down here farming. Your mid laner's doing like mid lane things. This is good. If you do get this tower quickly, then that's great too. You have now set this area up for your carry to ditch this bottom lane and now come up to here. You, as the hard support, still want to have them be safe, of course. So I would leave them a ward. Maybe here, here. Where else have I used? Here's okay, but I think it's a little conservative. Maybe here. Back here, sometimes people won't expect the high ground ward so early. I think that's okay. Here, this is good. Those are all fine. Let's say, let's place it here. This is nice. Well, I should have done it a little lower, actually. But anyways, this is nice because now you'll see... Remember we talked about he pushes the lane up to here, and now he feels safe all of here, and he wants to come farm these jungles. How will they get him? Well, if his creeps are right here, he'll see anyone who rotates at the tower. So his only danger is if someone, like, smokes or walks from here over here to get him, or through here. But if they come through here, there's a chance the creeps will see him. And then from the mid lane, they could come from here, or from mid lane up this way. That's why this ward is quite nice, because we just talked about all these different pathways. Boom, boom, boom. You know, and we said we weren't that concerned about this area. Also, though, that's why this ward should have been a little lower, so that you could see this way, so that if people did come through here, you'll see them here. Now, another spot you could use would be here. And this is because your next priority is this mid tower. The 4 of you are going to shift. So the off laner, the 4 support, you as the 5 support, and probably your mid laner are going to come here. One of you, of those 4 people, might actually go bottom instead because your carry just left and you still need someone to be in this lane. So that might be something that happens. So it might just be 3 of you in the mid lane. But since you're going to siege this mid lane and you're going to play in this area, that's when this ward can be nice to, you know, give yourself vision. And then a lot of you just like play in this area and you have the vision advantage here. And if they want to fight you, they have to come from like this way, which is, you know, it's whatever. You have nice vision. You can run up here if they chase you and you'll have the high ground advantage. But you're going to get this mid tower. Boom, boom. You have these 2 towers. Now you have 2 choices. Depending how well your carry is doing up here, and depending if you want to fight a lot or not, you can either stay in this area, so you keep a lot of wards up, like by a lot I mean probably 2, maybe 3. But you also place several sentries to make sure they do not have vision. So this whole area should be dark to the enemy team, and then you have a bit of vision to spot anytime they try to approach this area. And then your team will push both waves. You will take this tower and this tower, in whichever order is convenient for you. And then after that, you will come bottom and get all of these. Your other option, after you're getting these 2 towers, which have made this area very safe to leave your carry in, now you can all go down here, and you can probably take these 2 towers. At least take this tower. Many people like to get all tier 1s first, like boop, boop, boop. I think that's okay, but at the same time, if you take this tower and then come bottom, you're just giving the enemy support time to de-ward this area, so you're going to lose your wards. And I think instead, it's better to just keep playing in this area with your vision and get these towers. And if you're in here, what are their options? One guy can play here, one guy can play here, and then everyone else has to be down here. Which, yeah, it's fine. This is our dead lane. We don't care if they're down here that much, depending on the game. And that's the same reason why it's only after we get all of these. When you have all of these towers, none of this feels safe to de-ward. When the Dire still has these 2 towers, then it's not so scary to come and check this area. And then once these 2 areas are safe, you now feel a little safer to move in further. And if you don't feel safe to move in further, that's fine. You can still drop a ward in these areas, which are like perfectly fine wards to have as Dire. But if this is gone and this is gone, just approaching this area is very scary as a hard support, which is who is primarily going to be doing the warding and de-warding for the enemy team. However, if you do decide to leave those up and then come down here to get this last one, then I recommend you do the same thing, but you take this area of the map. And now you will push this lane and this lane and get these 2 towers, while your carry potentially gets this tower on his own, or like we said, if he gets pushed out, he'll just go here. He's just farming. We don't even care what he's doing, really. We just want him to farm a lot. And then you will stay in this area and protect your vision. You'll de-ward this area as well as you can, and then you will play really aggressive vision, maybe here, maybe like here, or if you have a chance, it's like nighttime and you can sneak down here, or maybe you're smoked, a ward over here is really nice. And you're just going to play really aggressively here. Oops, what am I here doing? And then once you get... That scared me, guys. And then once you get these, then you make your way to this last tower. And then we'll talk about the high grounds later. Now, of course, you can go in whatever order. Like, there's no right or wrong order. But having said that, the order I just gave you is a little bit more right than other possible orders. But this is why it also depends, like, how the game is going. If you have a carry like Wraith King who is just rocking the bottom lane and he has skeletons, and it's like, okay, let's just get this tower first. We just killed both of them. Okay, just get it. Why not? A free tower is a free tower. You take those anytime you can. What I laid out for you is when it's not so free and it's a bit harder, right? If your team is just crushing it, it doesn't matter what you do. Now, we're going to switch to the Dire side, but honestly, it's all pretty much going to be the same as what we just talked about. And then after we finish that, we will use that to decide how we choose if we're going to defend instead of pushing. All right, here we are as the Dire. So let's consider Radiance Towers, even though, like I said, it's going to be very similar. One thing we'll point out, though, last time we talked about Roshan and why that made like these towers all very good. On this half of the map, there's no Roshan, but there are Ancients. Well, there didn't spawn because, there we go. There are Ancients, which, as I'm sure you know, are the best jungle camp you could possibly farm if you have the ability to farm it. Now, most people will eventually get that ability, carries anyways. You know, even if they're like someone like Medusa or Sven who can do them early. And I don't know where I was going with the example exactly. Like Juggernaut, he's not necessarily someone that farms Ancients particularly early, but he will reach a point where he can farm them. And so every carry loves to have access to Ancients at some point. Whether that's early or late, it's nice to have access to Ancients. This is one of the Radiant advantages. Where last time we said, you know, no one really wants to prioritize this tower, but that it's good for Roshan. So that's Radiant's, in Radiant's favor. The other situation, which you could consider a disadvantage as well, I suppose, is that it's very nice for Radiant to protect this tower, not only because it'll stall out the enemy team, which we'll talk a bit more in a bit, but because it protects your Ancient camp. And so if your carry, like your carry does not mind farming bottom as much if you're Radiant as they do in Dire, in my opinion, because you have the Ancient camps. Well, I suppose only if you're a carry that can farm Ancients early. If you're a carry that can't farm Ancients early, then you would prefer this side. Because there are no Ancients, and, you know, if you can't farm Ancients, you're essentially missing one camp that you can't do. Which just makes this area really inefficient then, because it's like, okay, farm these 2 camps, and now I have to run all the way over here. And it's like, it's a bit more awkward to farm these 3 because of like how they're positioned. It's not like in a line. Where, you know, if you came here, it's like, okay, that's nice. But then where do I go from here? I go to the lane? Okay, and if I want to go back, I have to run like all the way this way. Whereas here is a bit more of like a circular path because of, like, you still have this camp. Whereas this one, like, going this way and then you're farming Ancients because you can, like, this is not so bad. Like, that path. But anyways, this is still priority number 1 for Dire. You want to take this tower because it opens up this whole area, like we talked about, the same, like, it opens up these 2 camps. That is the most noticeable thing, where every other tower in the game, all the tier 1 towers, like, this doesn't strictly open up anything new. If you were going to farm this as the enemy mid laner, you probably could have done that already. So getting this tower doesn't necessarily open this, it just makes it a little safer. And same with this. You get this tower, and it's like, what? I still feel equally, like, I could have farmed this if I wanted it to. If I had that ability, I could have done it anyways. Because this tower is kind of far, and because this is the high ground. And then I just run out this way. And now that you have it, it's like, okay, I'm like mildly safer. But the reason it was scary is because people can come from this way, really, and chase me out. And not so much that people usually rotate that way. Whereas the safe lane towers open up access to these 2 camps. Yeah, some people were able to farm them anyways, like even with the towers up, but this just like, it just becomes so much safer to do. Whereas when this tower is up, it's like pretty scary that people could collapse on you from this way and from this way, from like mid lane, or from this tower and cut in this way. By removing this tower, you open up like this escape path. You open up this escape path this way. What are we talking about? I lost my point for a second there. Let's go on to the mid tower. Actually, I really feel like I don't need to talk about it that much, because I feel like it really just reflects what the other side talked about. Where our priority as Dire is to get this tower, and then we can either choose to get this tower as well, or we will come mid. You know, we'll drop a ward like, let's say here, or, you know, maybe here. This might be a little deep. Well, it's kind of okay too, though. I might put mine here, and then I'm playing in this bottom part. I'm not letting anyone come out until we get like this tower and this tower at least, and maybe this tower as well. And then after we do all that, then we come top. And similarly, we will, you know, we plant ourselves here. Like, I'm willing to put a cliff ward here because I plan to be here for a long time defending this. And then, because there's like 3 of us here, I don't feel so scared being in this area. And then one person pushes the tower, and if they rotate in, then we're here to fight them from the back. And it depends how many people they rotate in and like how close the game is going. If they're really strong, like, I wouldn't do that, of course. But if they're only bringing in a couple people, then it's fine, and you can probably take that fight. This one doesn't matter that much. It's like the offlane towers don't feel that great to take. these towers feel good to take. However, the only reason offlane towers feel good to take is because of this like triangle. And if you can take these, then you make this safer for you to invade. And so you like that. Let's talk about why you might defend a tower instead. Like, why would I defend this tower? One, you never want to lose towers for free. But two, you know how in all the plans I talked about, we start by taking this enemy safe lane tower? That means if I am as Zquixotix, if I defend this tower, the enemy feels really... What am I saying? They feel required to be here. Yeah, you can get the mid tower first, if that, like, so happens. But the higher level you go, many people will focus this tower first. And until you get this tower, it feels really weird to go shift somewhere else. So if you hold this tower, the enemy team will just keep staying here. They'll just keep trying to get this tower, and the longer you can defend it, casting your spells and protecting this tower, the longer you'll keep, like, 3 heroes here, 2 heroes here. And so when I'm just the hard support Zquixotix, I feel really good about defending this tower with my life, because I can buy several minutes of time while my carry is, say, farming our jungle, or maybe farming their jungle. You know, if there are 2 or more heroes here, and I'm just a hard support, it's like, okay, let's trade our time. Like, I'm wasting 5 minutes here as a hard support. You are wasting 5 minutes here as the offlaner and the 4 support. It's just, like, better for our team. It's not so much that I'm getting a lot, even though I am getting, like, experience and gold by myself up here, which is great. But it's more, what matters more is that you're wasting their time and forcing them to be up here. And if they decide to leave, it's like, cool. You know, you'll push this tower on your own as the 5 support, and eventually someone is going to have to rotate here again, and then you'll just back up and continue to defend this tower. And wherever they rotated, you can then rotate as well. Like, if they leave, you push the lane one more time, and then you go, like, TP to where you need to be. And then your creeps are damaging their tower, and then you're also in the fight like you need to be. If you have split pushers, it changes your tower priority. So we just spent like 30 minutes talking about that specific order. If you have someone like Nature's Prophet, tier 1 towers don't have backdoor protection. Where backdoor protection means you have to have creeps in the area. That's why pushing the lane is so good. Because you actually need your creeps to get these towers. Tier 1s don't need that. Which means if you're in a really rough game, you can kind of forget what I said about having to focus this tower first and then moving on. You can just get whichever tower you can. Or you can just defend whichever tower you need to stall out the game. Because eventually your carry will reach a point. You know, even as Zquixotix... Let's see. Even as Zquixotix, if I were to buy some carry items... Let's drop some of this stuff. And buy... what's a normal carry? Something like this, and like where treads. I don't know, BKB, I guess. And then I level up to like you know, if you reach a point where you don't have any towers, but your carry is getting kind of strong, they can just hit the tower on their own, and it's like not that bad. Because they're just not going to take that much damage. Oftentimes they'll have some form of lifesteal or health regeneration. So in this case, like, Zquixotix's not the best tower takers, and I don't necessarily have tower taken items. But if you had like a Nature's Prophet who just like you're Zquixotix, so you're stalling up here. You're stalling this tower up here. They bring 4 heroes. Even if Nature's Prophet doesn't have a creep wave here, he can just TP in, create his treants, and take this tower on his own. So then you don't have to worry so much about opening up these tier 1 towers. You just defend and let your split pushers get them later. If you're in a really bad game, tier 2 towers become more important. Where you've been stuck in your side of the base for a really long time, for example, you've lost all your towers, and you only have like some tier 1 towers, maybe. And then at some point, you manage to take a tier 2 mid. What that means is at some point, if your team does win a huge fight and you push to their base, you can only get 1 Rax. And you may not be strong enough to end the game, but you would have been strong enough to get like another set of barracks, except for the fact that this tier 2 tower is up. In that case, it's pretty hard, but oftentimes you just have to find ways to get these tier 2 towers, or at least like open up 2 of them. If you have 2 tier 2 towers open, it feels a lot better than going straight to high ground. Like, even ignoring the case I just talked about where your team is like really behind, one of the reasons like we sit here and we camp here until we get both of these towers is so that eventually with our lead, we come up here and we take this and we can immediately move this way. We don't even necessarily need our creeps because the creeps from the mid lane will cancel backdoor protection for top. And we have opened up that possibility to get 2 sets of racks by camping here and getting both towers. But say, for example, you only get top and you kind of ignore mid and bottom, and you eventually take a long fight to get top, and you spent a lot of resources, you wipe them, only a couple of you are alive, but you can only get this top barracks because this tier 2 mid is still up. And by the time you go back and you push the wave in and get this, like they're all respawned, and now you have to take another high ground fight, which is really... Sometimes it's okay, but usually it's really rough. High ground fights are meant to be difficult. That's why they're going to be their own video later, where we spend a lot of time thinking about them. And so if we prepare ourselves by taking 2 tier 2 towers first before attempting a high ground fight, then when we win 1 high ground fight, we can immediately transition into 2 sets of racks instead of having to take 2 high ground fights where we take 1 and we get 1 racks. We take 1 and we get 1 racks. But that still requires 2 high ground fights, which can be very difficult. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes even when you get both, even when you have all the tier 2s, you're still going to have to do that, where 1 high ground fight is 1 racks, 1 high ground fight is 1 racks. Like, that just happens sometimes. But that's why it's usually better to get all these towers first, so that you only have to take 1 high ground fight, and then you see how much you can get from there. Do I have anything else to say about towers? We didn't quite talk about tier 3s. Like I said, we're going to do that later. I mean, I did talk a little bit there. Something I will say that low levels don't know, I think, is that when you get this tower, you don't actually have to take the barracks at all. You could just go for the base. There are very rare cases where that happens, and it's usually in a very close game. But sometimes that can make all the difference, where a set of racks honestly doesn't matter in the game, but you could just actually win the game. Sometimes it's scary to do that. It feels like, oh, if we get repelled here, we didn't even get racks. That's true. And that's why it's usually a more experienced thing, where you have to be a higher level to realize when you can when you can actually finish the game and when it would be better to at least get racks. But I am going to throw out that possibility out there for you guys to think about. And then, yeah. So in conclusion, think about what towers open up for you, the pathways that people can teleport and walk, and how you feel safe, like coming here. If you don't feel safe coming here when all the towers are up, what tower has to be down to feel safe in this area? This one, you know? Even when the map changes. What makes you feel, if I'm the Dire, what makes you feel uncomfortable to be in this area? This tower makes me feel a little uncomfortable. This tower makes me feel a little uncomfortable. But honestly, I still feel like okay being in this area. I'm probably not going to be here forever, but I'd probably come up here even if these towers were up. It's like, whatever. But being over here, that makes me pretty uncomfortable between 2 towers directly. Like, I wouldn't do that until this tower is dead. And so this is how you can gauge for yourself where you feel safe. Sometimes you may not know the full limits of your heroes. So this is a big difference between high-level core players and low-level core players, where you'll see like high-level players cut waves like all the way here, even when these towers are up, or like cut waves here or whatever, because they know they're safe to do that based on that matchup. We won't worry about that. We're talking about hard supports. And as a hard supports, try to direct your team without being pushy. Tell them like, hey, can we all group up to get this tower? In the end, whichever tower you can take is fine. If you can only get your tower to come get mid, sure. If you can split push somehow, sure. Like, do whatever you can to try to get towers. They are your priority in this game, and it's because they open up the map a lot. They do get some gold for your team, but really it's a positioning thing, and it sets you up to be able to get more resources safely while they feel less safe. So you really do want to take more. You know, it opens up more smoke paths where if you smoke on the dire, you can't run through here. The tower will break it. But if this tower is dead, then your smoke could go through here, like all the way down here. Otherwise, you have to like run this way and then there, or like this way and then there. In terms of wards, like if we were dire, I only need... If I'm dire and I want vision to protect this entryway, like a ward like this protects both of this. It protects this entranceway and protects this entranceway. This tower is protecting this entrance. This tower is protecting this entrance. But when these towers fall, I now need more wards. Like, okay, now I need one like in this area to spot where the mid tower used to be. And honestly, this ward does kind of cover this tower, but not totally, because someone could come in through this way, and that gets a little scary. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about for towers. Go take these safe lane towers, guys. Peace out.